Welcome back to another clay tutorial. Today we are going to create the Hyrule Castle from Super Smash Bros. I hope you guys are ready for a really long tutorial, definitely the longest I've ever made. I think it got just a little bit over 15 minutes long. And it definitely took me the longest out of all my figures to create. This thing is also massive, definitely the biggest thing I've ever made. So here we have this main base color of gray that we'll use for the castle. Now, it would have taken so much clay to be able to fill up the castle. I don't have that much clay. So we're going to use a lot of foil to fill in the inside of the castle. And this just saves so much clay, and it makes it so much lighter too. These are the main platforms, then also the tower here for the stage, just the base shape of it. So after we use this FIMO liquid clay on it, we can get that baked in the oven. Now we have the main shape of the castle, and we can start filling in these cracks here, because once these are filled in, then we can sort of have everything more flat and evened out. Now we can use these long strips of gray clay, and we'll start covering the entire castle with it. This whole creation was made over a couple days' time. I remember staying up till about 3 in the morning on this first base part of the castle. That foil itself even took just maybe 2 or 3 hours to create, and all of this gray stuff took a couple hours to add and smooth on. So this was a very, very long creation to make, but honestly, I'd like to make some more stages, so if you guys have any ideas, what are your favorite stages, let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can create them. You can also let me know what types of fighters you would like to see on them. As you saw in the beginning there, I made all of the tiny fighters and all of the items and things like that. But honestly, the castle took way longer to create than all of the miniature things. Here we have our trusty toothbrush to add in some nice texture. And we'll start drawing out where all the bricks are going to be. I chose this stage over all of the other stages because in the 64 version of this is always my favorite stage to play on. I also really like the Star Fox stage, but this one was always my favorite. And I'm really happy that they kept this in, I think, every version of Smash Bros. The stage was always in there. And it's a lot different now in Ultimate because you can play with 8 people on the stage. That just makes it much crazier. Now that we have all our bricks done here, we need to create all of these strips. I don't really know what these details are for. I don't know, you've seen them on castles before, I'm sure, though. We have a few strips around this tower here. So now we're going to use some soft pastels. In the past, I had some artist pastels, but I read some warnings on them that said, caution, this product may cause cancer and things like that, and to me, that just kind of freaks me out. I read some stuff online about it that maybe you don't really have to worry about that. Maybe it's just if you were to inhale the dust from it or stuff like that, but I don't want to use products that can potentially harm me or cause cancer. So I got rid of those, and I got these other ones. They don't really chalk up like the other pastels do, but that's fine because as you saw, I can rub it on with a Q-tip and it works just fine. I think that health and safety is better than having a better looking clay figure. So here we have these grates, these sort of windows. Now I wanted to add this on after baking it because that just made it a lot easier to not mess up all of the darker gray colors. These are all of the platforms that you battle on. And here we'll create this long brick that will outline that. This part you don't really see too often, like you don't actually battle on this part of the stage, but it's definitely there and you can see it from some camera angles, so I just wanted to make the whole castle. Now this isn't exactly the pattern that's on there, but they have this crazy brick pattern on all these platforms that there was no way I was going to create. It's super intricate. So this pattern looks really good, and I think that it works just fine to cover that up. Now we have this different mixture here for the other bricks, and that's what we'll use for the bricks on all the other platforms. This platform I'm sure you recognize, this is the main one you battle on. Instead of putting all of the individual pieces on, I think it's much easier to just cut in the bricks and it just makes it look like they're all tiny bricks. Here we have this pathway on the top. This is where you can actually battle the rest of the castle. Behind that you can't even go on. Here we have our toothbrush again to add some texture into the path, and the path continues down on the bottom here. So now we have these platforms. This is the same color we were just using for those other bricks. These are the 3 platforms that you can jump on. Typically you can find some items on here or hide from the tornado. This is where they're gonna be, but for now let's get this stuff into the oven. So now I think our castle is starting to look pretty good. Once we get these platforms on there, it'll look even better, but the main detail here I think we're missing is these towers. So we'll create a couple of these, using the knife to create the really sharp edges on them. So there's a couple different sizes of them. There's 2 tall ones and 1 short one. And we'll create this brick pattern also. Now we have another one, and this one is for, you'll probably recognize this, it's the tunnel that's on the right side of the stage. And this is, I feel that I'm always getting stuck inside of this tunnel and just getting hit and hit and hit. It's like you never fly off the edge because you just keep getting stuck inside of this tunnel. You can definitely take a lot of heavy damage on this stage without flying off because it's so big. Now I wanted to use some wires to create this grate. I think this looks a lot better than using clay because you can actually see through the little window now. Here on this far side here, we'll create the rooftop. This is also where a lot of the battle takes place, is on this rooftop. So now that we have the right shape that we need, we'll start adding in this pattern of all the shingles on the roof. We have the little pathway continuing over here, but with a couple different shades of green. So let's start attaching the towers onto here. I didn't really show it, but there's some FIMO liquid clay underneath those. And for one last detail here, we need to cut out these bricks for the top. And now our castle is ready to get baked. Now after baking, we can start attaching all of the rest of our details on here with some super glue. Like I said, this is going to be a really long video. I wanted to get everything I could in here without making it too long, but still showing you all of the details you need to see. And here it is, guys, the Hyrule Castle. So now that we have our castle, let's begin on creating all of our little characters. I had to take a good look at it to see where I wanted everything to be. Originally, I wanted this video to be in 2 separate parts, and it was like that, but I thought maybe it'd be better that I just combine them together because I've seen videos where there's a part 1 and a part 2, and typically the part 2 doesn't really get seen that much because you don't really want to come back a week later and see somebody's part 2. So I think it's best to just have it all together. I think you can probably guess which fighter we're creating first here, Pikachu. I wanted to create sort of the easier characters and also some of the favorites. You know, there's no way I would have been able to create something like Samus on here, or if I did, it would probably look really bad. It's just really too small to be able to create crazy detailed characters like Samus or maybe even Link. So I went with some of the easier characters. This is a lot like creating that Pikmin scenery that we made. Their characters are about the same size. I think the Pikmin were a bit smaller though. For the last details here, we have the brown stripes on his back. And for the tail, we'll glue that on after baking. And I'm guessing you probably know who this character is already, Kirby. So I know I mentioned before in the last time I made Kirby that I wanted to make him sucking up some kind of enemy. And when I started making this, I thought this is the perfect time to make him sucking up an enemy. I couldn't figure out at first who his victim was going to be, but, well, you'll be able to guess in just a minute when you see me start creating it. We just need to create the color here for his arms and his legs. Here we have the legs, and he's in his sucking up an enemy sort of standing up position. Now we can start creating our victim here. We only need to create just his legs. I thought that part was pretty funny, just the wind from the bottle knocked him over. And yes, we have him sucking up Mario. So now, using some green clay, we are going to create Yoshi. Now, I don't usually play as Yoshi in Super Smash Bros., but he's a fairly easy character to create, and I think he's a pretty popular character. Everyone knows who Yoshi is. I have thought about creating Yoshi on a bigger scale before, like a normal sized clay character. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, or what other Smash Bros. Characters you'd like me to make. Now we're going to use some wires on him here because we want his tongue to be sticking out, doing his typical tongue attack. He's always eating stuff in the Mario games. Now we need some tiny little hands here. And we'll start creating his boots after that. I think that this is honestly the most detailed character out of all of these for the Smash Bros. Stage. There's just so much detail packed into this tiny little guy. So after we create the spikes, now we'll create the shoes. Let's attach those onto his body here. Now that we're done with Yoshi, we can start creating our next fighter, which is going to be possibly the most powerful Pokemon, Mewtwo. At least that was the case in the older Pokemon, like the original ones. He was the most powerful. I don't know if that's still the case or what, but I know there was other Pokemon to create, like maybe Jigglypuff would have been extremely easy. There's some other easier fighters, but I think Mewtwo's pretty cool. And I had this cool idea to be able to make him doing his special attack. I think it's called Shadow Ball. So I'm going to use some wool for that, and I think that it looks really awesome. Here we have his little legs. Now we have this weird, well, it's like his stomach and also his tail in one piece here. And we'll create his feet. Look like little fortune cookies. And now Mewtwo is complete. So now we're done with the fighters, and we're going to move on to creating all of the little items. I sort of picked the most popular items. You know, we have a Pokeball, and we have a beam sword, and well, you'll see the rest of the items in a second. Here we're going to create the beam sword. I wanted to mix these different colors together to get this sort of glowing feel to it, and I think that it worked pretty awesome. So there we go, attaching that together. These items have been in all of the Smash Bros. Games. I think every item I created here is in every Smash Bros. Game. Here we have the heart container from Zelda. I'm not actually sure what the beam sword is from, if it's just a Smash Bros. Exclusive item, or maybe it's from a different game. I'm not actually sure. Here we have the hammer, which became kind of a pointless item in Ultimate, because you can just hit somebody with it anyway. You were invincible with it in the first Smash Bros. Game, which I really liked. And we are ready to get baked. Now after baking, let's take some super glue and start putting everything together. First we have Pikachu's tail. Now we have the wool for Mewtwo's Shadow Ball. We'll take this main white ball, and then we have 3 different colors of purple, different shades, and we'll mix that together. And I wasn't exactly sure how this was going to look, but it turned out awesome, and I love how this looks. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit long on the sides, but we can trim that up a little bit with some scissors. And this is Mewtwo. That looks really cool. So now let's start getting everybody onto the stage. I didn't really have quite a plan of how to do this. I just sort of started putting them on and, well, looked where it needed more characters and put it on there. Now we have the items. And here it is, guys, the Super Smash Bros. Stage with our tiny fighters and items. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and maybe even consider subscribing, and I will see you all in the next video.